Hi, I'm Yasmin Owusu, and this is my producer, Charlie Kesenek.
But I'm your husband, and you're using all my stuff right now. What are you talking about?
So anyway, I've been looking for a one-stop shop podcast for wellness, amateur sociology, psychology, pop culture, and whatever else sparks my interest. So I created one. We are limited to no lanes. We hit the gas and get into it. This is Peaked. Press play. Hi, welcome to Peaked Podcast. I'm Yasmin, your host, and we're back for another week of Peaked. And guess what, folks? I'm not moving. I'm not moving out of my rental house. You may ask yourself, who knew you were? Who are you? What are you even talking about? What is this podcast? Lots of questions might be on your mind as I'm saying this. But we were thinking about moving out of our rental because our management company, like a couple of weeks before or maybe even just a week before we went on our big road trip, our cross-country road trip, let us know that our landlord was putting our house on the market. Via a plucky lady named Kim, we've come to know, and I won't say love, but just we appreciate her very specific Southern lady type of condescension. I mean, she really nails the bless your heart vibes in a way that like you just kind of have to give props to, even though it's like freaking maddening for us two Yankees. Like when we first moved into this place, it was mid-January, it was mid-January. We moved in mid-month. Super fun paying two rents for a second. Either way, there was some kind of miscommunication with turning over the gas bill or whatever, what have you. And we were frustrated. And so we called her and her boss or whatever to see what could be done and how we could get that heat on for the astronomical amount of rent and, fees that we were paying to move into the place to freeze, like we were in Port Authority in winter. And we were met with a very not contrite Kim, using this very saccharine, like, well, I just know that you are so smart and so bright, both of you, that you would have read your lease and you would have read in that lease and found out that, and something along the lines of how it's not her fault or her problem. I mean, can you imagine the audacity of that kind of? It's one to get used to. If you ever move from like the Northeast to the South, it will be one to get used to because like no one's knocking anyone's teeth out about this thing. And I just know they think it goes over our heads and they think that we're just like, oh, we're being complimented that we're so smart. Like it doesn't go over our heads. We're just like not fighting people for no reason, willy-nilly. I mean, some people are, but I'm not personally. Either way, we did kind of... I thought it would be interesting to discuss how one can mindfuck themselves into doing something that makes no sense. And make fear-based decisions. So we heard this. And then when we came back, I would say more Charlie than myself kind of went into a bit of a frenzy of like looking for places to live. And keep in mind, I mean, this is a currently filmed podcast. So like it's August and, January is when we would actually have to move. Like they would honor our lease. They're not going to kick you out in the street, said Kim. Thanks, I guess. Either way, so we were going to have that much time. But, I understand and that he wanted to get ahead of things and kind of like, take control of that and not be scrambling to find a place during the holiday season, like in December or whatever. And so I got on board and we were like looking at stuff online. And then we actually went to see a couple places, like 3 or 4 places yesterday. And there's a lot of cute stuff out there. But I did kind of say that after we had that day of looking at spots, like, listen, we either need to talk to Kim about getting out of our lease early or, look later, because I don't want to be falling in love with places that are like not going to be on the market in like 4 months, right? It doesn't make any sense. So Charlie did call Kim and she did her Jedi mind tricks and just said something along the lines of like, well, you know how things are going these days and we just nothing's really a guarantee, but I don't think this house is going anywhere and whatever. I will say that does not seem like there's like an aggressive attempt to like get rid of the place yet. Like there's no sign on the lawn. There's no phone number to call if you're driving by. Granted, it's a cul-de-sac, so who's driving by? But I also saw the pictures online are super old. I mean, he's not really selling the issues and like it's not a great market. So she's probably right that this place is not flying off the market by January. From what I've known just from like talking to friends, neighbors, and just like random people that I meet, like the market's not great. It's not a great seller's market right now. Things are just kind of sitting. All of this to say that after that conversation with Kim, we were like, wait, did we not just like look at a place that they were like, it's on the market, and there was a post in the yard and a phone number, and like the realtor was like, yeah, it's going to be kind of annoying because people are going to have to come see the place. So that's an inconvenience to you. And me and Charlie are just like, I don't know what came over our brains and our like, scarcity mindset. We're like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like whatever, as long as we can have a year lease. I mean, what is the difference in like necessarily like, what is the difference in stability of like the extra 6 months? And we have 6 months now, we'd have 12 months then, and there's no guarantee that the house doesn't sell. So why not just stay where we are and not drag all our things out of here? And like, frankly, I didn't necessarily see anything I like very much more than this. Like the fact that Charlie has a fully converted, air conditioned, all that, like huge garage that is his studio. And like, I have this room that, is just a second bedroom to like do my podcasting and like vibe and like watch reality TV. Like we have 4 bedrooms, and we're like, I'm money transparent. I'll tell you, we're paying $1,800 for 4 bedrooms, convenient to the city. So it's hard to beat. We just kind of looked at each other after that funny little conversation Charlie had with Kim, where she kind of, I would say, out of character, waxed a little philosophical about these times and got into politics a little bit, very out of character for this very Texas lady. And like, I don't know that I know that Austin isn't Texas, but I'm feeling like she's from a town slightly outside just based on accent. Like this might be a Katy or a Taylor, like adjacent, but not quite Austin, maybe even Georgetown, maybe even that close. Either way, we're just kind of like, what are we doing? Like there's no certainty in a rental in general, other than like the 12 months you have leased. So we're not doing that anymore. Anyway, in the process of telling friends and family that we might have to move out of this house, because obviously they visited us and have enjoyed this place. I was telling my brother-in-law, Seth, oh, we're moving out, blah, we might have to move out if he sells the place or whatever. And, he was nice enough to be like, oh, like your sister, my sister, his wife, has great credit, and she'd be like down to guarantor. And like, I was very like, oh, that's really nice. But in my mind, I'm like, absolutely not. And I had to think about why I was like, absolutely not. And then, I thought about it, and the reason is, maybe some of you will relate to this. Me and my sister, we started off life in a very peaceful household with a really responsible father who like provided an amazing life for us, which changed somewhat after his death. And also a little bit during when he was married to my stepmother, which was most of my young life. Actually, he met her when I was like barely 2 or something like that. No, I'm exaggerating. It was like 5 or something like that. So there was some bells and whistles that came along with her. And, I have a blended family of like half sisters and brothers. And, I consider them all just like full, but obviously the ones that I grew up in the household with. So my brother Kwame, who is my stepmother and my dad's son, and then my full sister Nadia, we grew up in the same household. So like we're closer in that way. But either way, like we have some bells and whistles on all sides. My sisters have some interesting dynamics with growing up with my mom and like, the 2 husbands that she's had, their dad and then the current one. And, my brother has whatever, comes up with him, and I have whatever comes up with me. And and then, there's other family members, there's cousins, there's uncles, there's aunts, like you name it. Like even my brother's side of the family I'm not related to, I grew up being very close to, I consider them my family. So there's stuff going on all the time. Some of it difficult, some of it, there's people who have like addiction issues, there's people who have money issues, someone's sick, someone's this. So we grew up in that kind of vibe, and have even like in adulthood, there's always someone, to use a millennial word, there's always someone tweaking. There's always someone tweaking. And I felt like my sister has worked so hard to get herself to a point where she can enjoy stability, both financially and in her household, and just like, should be allowed to, has earned the right to relax and enjoy that. And so I just have a vested interest in our collective deserving and enjoyment of whatever peace we have managed to cultivate. And even if I'm the one tweaking, I still stand by the fact that she shouldn't have to deal with that. And none of us should have to deal with anyone tweaking except for ourselves. And so my thought on that was like, I'm not going to necessarily like lean into like my whatever things are going on in my life in chaos. affecting the people that I love, that I know have like really, really had to claw their way out of chaos themselves and have found like a soft place to land. And I just want them to be able to stay there, unless I'm like, on the street bleeding or something. And, I'm tying this to, there are certain people in media that I just always see having a problem, right? Like there's always something going on. And I thought about not saying the name of this person, but I'm just going to say it, because if you're going to be ugly, be ugly, I guess. So I feel that way a little bit about Jools Lebron. So if you're not familiar with Jools Lebron, you might recognize when I tell you, like so demure, like so, so cutesy, so mindful. So Jools Lebron coined that term. She's a trans woman, and she does amazing makeup and has done like collabs with people like Jeffree Star, and like was a great content creator and is super funny. So I became aware of her when she kind of had that viral moment of like a video where she was saying that she was like being so cutesy and demure going to work in a certain way. It was humorous. It's hard to explain, meme culture type stuff. But I think a lot of you are going to be familiar with it anyway. So after that whole like explosion of fame, there was some controversy around random entities trying to trademark that phrase, and then like Jools finally like trademarking it and whatever, and like that conflict. And I found out about that kind of after the fact, but the way I just always find myself feeling away when she posts videos kind of bringing us into whatever problems are happening in her life. Not immediately. Like when she kind of came online and was like, after that whole viral video, I'm broke. I was like, all right, that sucks. Like she should have made some money from it. And then a little down the line, it's like, I went out of town and whatever, I've been really depressed and my whole family has had to clean my house, and look, they cleaned my house for me. And okay, some people like suffer from depression. Okay. And then it was again online complaining about the money and the this. And then it was like, oh, by the way, I was an addict the whole time. And, and now I'm clean and now everything sucks and I have no money. And, and then now again, I just saw Jools Lebron online begging people to help fix her teeth. And I'm just like, girl, you just always got a problem, And like we all know these people in our life. And it's almost like, it's not like you doubt that what they say is going on is going on. I believe Jools is struggling with addiction. I believe that this, that, and the other was happening. But at some point when someone takes on this victim narrative, there's a few steps missing. It's like, I'm not saying this is what happened, but were you perhaps not on your P's and Q's about trademarking? Were you perhaps not researching how to monetize this moment for yourself? Were you perhaps more, I don't know, like into partying and the fame and like got into addiction and didn't like get your bag, and like, do you need your teeth fixed because you were an addict, and it's like, it gets to a point. This is my new favorite phrase. Thank you always, the African American community, for like giving me new phrases that just I overuse. And so does everyone else. But like it gets to a point with these people who always have a problem. And I have a little bit of a segue into like, I was listening to Lena Dunham's audiobook. I mean, it's also a book you can just read, brick and mortar. But, I've got my funny things with Lena Dunham, so I never really know if I want to read the whole thing. I do find her writing to be like funny, but she has been a problematic figure in many ways and can kind of like bother me, but I still find myself really interested in her perspective. And I do think she's a talented writer. Either way, so I've been listening to it off and on as long as I can stand it before I get irritated with her, which I tend to. And I heard a lot of that same theme that I'm feeling with someone like Jools Lebron from subtext, right? So she's describing how she had these issues with chronic pain. She had a lot of issues she was overworking and she was overcommitting, and then finding herself in positions where she had to kind of just stop and break her commitments and break contracts and XYZ, right? And you do hear, she kind of describes people's frustration with her as they're not believing her. But I really think they do believe you, but they just think there are a few steps missing in personal accountability. not taking care of yourself and not making sure that you make time for self-care and overworking and knowing that you're overworking and not taking stress seriously, there's a bit of personal responsibility that is involved there. And I think there are just certain people who you just get that vibe after a while where it's like, you're always going to have a problem if you don't shift your perspective, your behavior. You don't get neuroplasticity to just change change course. It's like at some point, people's empathy, it can kind of plummet if you're just that person that's always got a freaking problem. And I know that sounds like very lovely of me, and I don't know enough about these people to be saying this stuff. So I'm not even saying this is factual about these people. Let's just say it's an impression that I generally get with them, that I'm projecting on them from people that I've known in life, that I just watch kind of just not pivot and then just continuously be like, why does this stuff always happen to me? My life is terrible. But you know what I mean? Anyway, so that's that on that. But what I really wanted to talk about, and it's a tough one. It's a tough one. The Ozempedemic has been very much on my mind. I've spoken on this podcast a bunch about having my own food issues and eating disorder and what have you, right? So it's been something that I've been hesitant to get super into, just how many people are getting extra thin. Some of them from semaglutides or peptides or whatever, and others just, I think, the good old fashioned millennial way, let's say. But, I just recently this week, there's been a lot of press around Ariana Grande, and I think we've all seen how she's presenting lately and how she presented during the Wicked tour along with her co-star. And a lot of people have been concerned. And I don't believe that she's in the Ozempic category of things. I think that she had a Tumblr account that a lot of us are aware of that seemed very eating disorder positive, let's say, back in the day. And I think maybe that's a continuous thing that she's maybe dealt with. And I know there are a lot of people who think or who say, look how everyone treated Chadwick Boseman and he ended up being sick and this and that and the other. As someone who has had these kinds of issues, I absolutely do not believe we need to normalize looking like that and just keep saying like, she's healthy. You don't know what's going on. Like, who knows? It could be an autoimmune disease. Okay. I think if you're in the public eye and you drop to, a really dangerously low weight, I don't think it's bad for there to be speculation about whether you might be ill with a very common disease amongst young women, and I think it shouldn't be normalized. People shouldn't just be like, that dress is gorgeous on this like skeletal figure that looks like they're dying, and if they do, if it does turn out that they have like, cancer or, God forbid, something terrible, I want us to continue to think of those bodies as being sick and something is wrong and something is not right. Like that's the same thing. Something's wrong or is not right. Super articulate podcaster. I think the dialogue just basically trying to shut everyone up about stuff like that is not productive. And I understand people think that it might have harmful implications to the person, but what exactly would be productive about allowing them to continue to look that terrible and no one care? Like, imagine if they are actually sick. Let's say that it's not an eating disorder, it's an autoimmune disease. Let's say that it's that or whatever. Would it be okay to just have them be in movies and stuff and everyone just kind of act like it's a normal thing to see someone's like entire breastplate exposed as bones and make no commentary whatsoever? Would that feel like a healthy society? And so that's the Ariana Grande of it all. And then she has this new album and it's called Petal. And she keeps saying petal in this strange way. Petal. And I think her behavior is a little odd and alarming. I think her kind of having this language around just being tiny and wanting to be a mouse. And there's something off there. And I think we can call, I almost said the spade a spade, but someone recently told me that's a problematic phrase. So let's just call something what it is, right? That doesn't look right. She does not seem like she's acting in a way that that feels it just feels off, you know? And I don't think there's anything wrong with making commentary about when something feels off and we're concerned, right? Um, and just in general, like, I've seen recent photos of Charlize Theron, who has always been someone who's like, statuesque, tall, gorgeous, alternately a little bit athletic or whatever it is, and just looking so extremely thin. And, people want to be like, well, whatever. Like, she's always been thin. And like, listen, I'm a 44-year-old woman. I think she's a little bit older, but, we're both middle-aged, I would say. Neither of us are elderly yet. It is not necessarily something that happens without, again, some kind of illness for someone to suddenly, without effort, be an extremely low weight in middle age. Like, that is not the peak of your metabolism. That is not when sudden, like, Erica Jane has at one point been like, my hormones made me all of a sudden drop a bunch of weight. Like, unless you're pre-diabetic, that's not a thing. And if you are pre-diabetic, that's also a cause for concern. So there's absolutely a reason for people to have a dialogue around that if you put yourself out in the public. Like, if you suddenly show up one day and you're a third of your weight, we're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, and when did that become so taboo? When did we have to start acting like these, skeletal, looking like they just came out of a concentration camp figures are just traipsing around on a red carpet and we're just supposed to be like slay queen? Like, be so for freaking real. And I don't think it's actually a coincidence that like it is absolutely a blizzard avalanche lately of the what is it, booger sugar, whatever people want to call it. That also seems to be becoming renormalized in an insane way. It's making my head spin as an elder millennial how much this feels like 2006 or 2005 when we were just seeing like the, Cressida Rich, just like these skeletal, like big-headed, like Zobots, like figures just like traipsing around and everyone's just like hyping them up, like just actually looking like they just came out of like a gulag or something. And I don't know, man. I do want to say about Ozempic, I stutter a lot when I'm talking about this because I don't want to be accusatory or weird around something that is like essentially like a mental disorder or like a sickness. And I've had it. So like I want to be sensitive, but also a little bit firm because I know what is not helpful as a dialogue, what's not helpful to normalize. But it's not like I'm one of those people that is like, semaglutide is cheating and like, no, absolutely. If your weight is causing or likely to cause comorbidities, you should be on that drug. I mean, or at least you should consider the possibility, or it's okay to consider the possibility. If you have other medical issues, like I've heard people can benefit from it if they have PCOS or Cushing's or, if again, diabetic, that's what it's for. But I'm not even saying you have to just be a diabetic to use it. Obesity has its mitigating factors and issues that they can supersede the harm that Ozempic can do and the side effects that Ozempic or like other semaglutides can have, right? So like if you're likely to mess up your joints because you're carrying a like massive amount of extra weight, if your doctor is telling you that like, your sleep apnea could be dangerous, then I could see possible stomach paralysis, bone loss, all of that, being something that you'd be more willing to contend with and like work with your doctor to make sure to mitigate. I could see that. But if you're someone who just is like, I don't know, 15 pounds heavier than you like being, 5 pounds heavier than you like being, I just feel like that's a lot of side effects and like potential harm to ignore. And I think it's absolutely wild for me to start realizing how many people, and not just women, men as well. We have Rod from Southern Charm who's like looking like sucked and just like a shadow of his like former self. And I've seen lots of men in Hollywood who are just looking like scary skinny, right? I think I knew we were like unwell and like I'm a woman, I'm, a millennial at that. I understood that we all want to be like thin. I understood that everybody like, louds and like fetishizes thin bodies. I don't think I was quite aware of how many people, if they had a tool for it, would get as thin as they could possibly get and not see when it passes the line of just being like ghastly looking. Like, I didn't realize that many of us were that unwell. Like even myself, and I've talked about like how having had an eating disorder, but then actually gaining a sort of unhealthy amount of weight, I had to like play that little game of trying to like lose some weight that could affect my health at my age, especially. You have to start like thinking about that kind of thing and cholesterol, whatever, without getting into a disordered place, right? And even with having all those issues, I had a goal weight that I had kind of set from when I was, I guess, when I thought that I was at a happy weight, which was like 115 or something like that. I think it was like 118 maybe. And I was like, oh, that's a good weight for me. And that's what my goal is going to be. And then I got to like 124 or something. And I'm like, this is enough. Like, I'm good with this, right? But I just feel like there are so many people, it seems like they're just going to see how low they can go. And it's like demented. Just the scope of how many people will get is absolutely emaciatedly thin as this drug will allow them to get. And then throwing, snorting things on the weekends on top of it, it really is feeling like we're about to like, go dance on the Lower East Side to go dance with misshapes. And it just feels like Lindsay Lohan is going to like fall down drunk on Ludlow or something. It's deja vu. And I didn't want to voo this again. Like there's lots of things I would want to bring back from like my heyday of like going out in my early 20s, but like massively flagrant, not hidden, insane cocaine use and like people looking around like The Walking Dead, like they're emaciated those are not things that I wanted to bring back. I'm down with some of the fashion that is coming back. Maybe we could leave head bands in the past, but I'd also like to leave all of this insane looking thinness in the past too. And, there's other elements when it comes to like the Ariana Grande thing that have been like disturbing. I feel like there's like an infantilizing thing going on with her. And interesting that she was on Disney with Jeanette McCurdy, who has talked about like the certain things that happened in her life and, certain abuses that happened that made her kind of want to have this really young, like prepubescent body. And I think there's something in Ariana's public persona that I think takes on that infantilized vibe that it just leaves me feeling a little Anyway, I'm going to leave that at that. And it's kind of impossible for me to talk about like the early 2000s as much as I did without making a little bit of mention. And also, I was talking about people who always got a problem. Making a little mention of Perez Hilton. I'm sure a lot of you have heard and I hope not seen. Lucky for me, I have not seen the video that went up. Like, he essentially went live. It's a very disturbing live, and people, want to be like, I don't even want to tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is. Essentially, what I've parsed from like people online is that he was self-harming with a serrated knife, rubbing blood all over himself and moaning in a way that was like semi-sexual and like disturbing to a lot of people. And this went on for like a half hour on live. I mean, I feel like I've had videos taken down for like, using the word shit or something like that. I've like violated community guidelines for like, I don't know, mentioning like JD Vance, but like this guy was on live for like a half hour doing that. By the way, fully nude, fully frontally nude. Wild. I mean, also super disturbing. And it seems like his mental health is not where it ought to be. And there's been a lot of dialogue about, well, he was horrible to women, in the past. And, he was terrible to Britney when she was going through mental health issues. And that's all very true. And, I don't know how I feel about people sort of saying that in tandem with whatever mental health issue he's going through right now. I guess it's one of those things, right? Like, he has been really toxic to people. I've never really enjoyed his presence as a public figure. I think he was really awful to certain women when they're in a really impressionable place. And he's also outed people, he's a gay man in the gay community who were not ready for that to be revealed about themselves. And he's just kind of overall just like moved in a very unempathetic, kind of dirtbag way in general. But that being said, he did recently have a health scare where he was in sepsis, and this could be a result of that. I've heard people talk about sepsis psychosis and whatever it is. And I can certainly say that, I don't share his personality to want to tear people down and revel in their demise, however terrible they've been. So I really do hope he gets the help he needs. Certain people are really not believing that it was a real thing. They were saying that he was liking comments or something about the live after it and before he was picked up by an ambulance. I have no reason to think that would necessarily be some publicity that he would want, I would think. As much as people are like, all publicity is bad publicity, I've known him publicly to want to portray himself in an upstanding light. Whether he decides to like be talking about adopting kids and, finding God after he was in sepsis, like he actually tries to spin his PR as like he's very, rehabilitated in his mind and he's a lot more spiritual now. So I'd find it really surprising if he wanted to do like a full like, Montero music video out of nowhere. So I tend to think that, yes, this is a psychotic break of some kind, and I hope he gets better. Not to say that I, want to be added to any group chats with him. But, I don't wish anybody to be in a really dark or schmoom and schmeidel place. So that's all I got to say on that, and maybe on anything for a minute. And until next time, be careful out there. And next time I'll be in my same house, which I'm sure you're all like holding your breath and caring so much about. Anyway, see you next time.